So good evening, everyone. Welcome once again to another project webinar hosted by Leo Crowdfunding. My name is David Johnson. I'm the CEO of Leo Crowdfunding. We're an equity property crowdfunding platform. I'm joined by one of my associates, Mr. Dal Ray, who's our investor portfolio manager. Good evening, Dal.
Good evening. Hello, everyone.
Good to have you on. And a quick hello then to our two special guests tonight. So Mark Afeeva and Michael Magee. Good evening, gentlemen.
Evening, David.
Good evening.
Absolutely fantastic to have you. And you were saying there, Mark, just before we went on record, that Michael's actually joining us from Dubai tonight. So a few hours ahead. But thank you, Michael, for making the effort to join the webinar and add your considerable experience. Fantastic. We'll hear from both of you in a second. So this is a project webinar for Stafford Gardens. It's a Planning Uplift Project in Surrey. We'll be running through all the details of this. So for those who are perhaps new to how we do these presentations, the first thing I have to do is just set the scene as to why I'm hosting a webinar promoting a property investment opportunity. So we are an equity crowdfunding platform, as I mentioned. However, there are regulations and compliance sensitivities around promoting financial opportunities. So we do have a license to operate. If you see along the bottom there, you can see Leo Crowdfunding Limited. You can see our FRN number there. We're an appointed representative of Sharon Limited, which is authorized and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Pitches for investment are not offered to the general public, and investments can only be made by registered investors on the basis of information provided by Leo Crowdfunding. So everything you're going to see tonight or hear tonight has been approved as a financial promotion. However, you, the investor, need to make a decision for yourself if this is an investment for you. It's important that you understand that. And again, you can go to the platform, read the terms and conditions, read the risk warnings, etc., and be comfortable if you decide to invest in a project such as this. So there is a Q&A as we get to the end of the project webinar. Please put any questions you have into the Q&A box. We don't use the chat box for these. We use the Q&A. That means we can keep a record. And again, for compliance purposes, we can have a record of all the questions that were asked. This has been recorded, so we don't read out people's names so that we don't obviously label someone or identify someone who may not wish to be identified on a recording. So that's really the housekeeping, and Dal will jump in with questions whenever prompted at the right time. So listen, that's sort of the housekeeping. This project tonight is what we call a Planning Uplift Project. Now it is more on the high risk scale of investing. It's effectively covering the cost of the planning application for 42 apartments and 4 townhouses in Surrey. The projected return on investment is 50%. So it's quite a high return on investment. And that is to be bearing in mind along with obviously the risk profile of this investment. It's due to be estimated a 9-month project. You can see there the total raise amount is £424,000, and we'll be breaking that down later on. However, the minimum investment amount is actually £100, so people can get in for a low ticket item, be part of the journey, and literally follow Mark, Michael, and the team through this journey. So that's the overview, and tonight we're going to cover just the main aspects that you'd expect to cover in a presentation like this, particularly about the financials, and point you in the next steps. So again, any questions or even comments, stick them into the Q&A for us. So absolutely delighted to welcome Mark and Michael. I'm going to hand over to you, Mark, to give an introduction on yourself, and then we'll kind of bounce through sort of this first slide, just setting the scene before we get into the project.
Thanks, David. Much appreciated. So good evening all, and thank you very much for making time this evening, dragging yourselves away from the football and celebrations to take part in this webinar. Michael and I are really excited about this because it's been a really long journey. Dates back, I think, to August 2020 when we had our first meeting with the vendors and first discussed what we could potentially do on the site. Quick snapshot of my background. As the caption says, I've been a practicing barrister at Matrix Chambers since October 1997, so just past the 25th anniversary of me being called to the bar. I still practice to a limited extent, primarily in the area of sports law, representing players and clubs and football agents, but property is my passion and has been for a very, very long time. Aside from property, I'm also involved in my family's business, which is a home care provider delivering services to vulnerable adults in the community. We have approximately 280 vulnerable adults that we look after in different boroughs in London, and we provide approximately 5,000 hours of care per week. So in terms of property and why it's my passion, I had a Zoom call with David last week as part of his weekly broadcast series, and I talked about how making a difference is something that's quite fundamental to me, and in a sense it kind of is a theme that runs across the different strands of my portfolio, whether it's law, whether it's looking after and providing services to maintain the well-being of the elderly, or leaving beautiful buildings, creating beautiful buildings and places that people genuinely want to call a home. It's about leaving one's mark and improving the situation compared to how you find it when you first get involved. So that led to establishing Danelise Homes, it led to working with Michael and with Cyril, who unfortunately can't join us this evening, but his CV is unparalleled. He's developed hundreds of units across London, often doing permitted developments and doing leases back to councils. So he's very well versed in the kind of thing that we're looking to do in relation to Stafford Gardens. Stafford Gardens itself is a project where we are looking to take forward 42 apartments and 4 townhouses through the planning process. We've had extensive dialogue with the council for over a year now. And during that period, there have been numerous changes to the scheme to give the council comfort that we know what we're doing and that we're keen to meet the needs of the local residents. And thankfully, we're now at a stage where they are happy with our design, our bulk and our mass, and we're almost ready to take off. So we're really hoping that people get involved after today's webinar, sign up and take it forward from Thursday when it goes live at midday.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mark. And Michael, do you want to just give a bit about your background? I was have known you for a number of years. Don't live too far apart in Northern Ireland originally, but for the last couple of years we've had plenty of shared flights back and forward to London and cups of coffee and plenty of discussions around property. I know you're very, very experienced, plenty of property in London, but you want to just give a bit of your background and what you're bringing to the party?
Thank you, David. Yeah, indeed. We've shared many a coffee and had many a discussion over the years. Yeah, my background, originally I started off as a commercial finance broker back in 2003. I grew a brokerage specifically or specializing in development funding and development finance right up until 2009 when the market turned against us in the credit crunch. But out of that, out of that credit crunch came opportunity, and we saw an opportunity to actually lend money to property developers. And so I, along with a high net worth investor, I partnered with him to lend money on a mezz and bridging style approach. We did various loans all over the UK, in fact, and did that right up until 2015 when an opportunity presented itself to for me to actually step out of lending and move into more of a development role. And that's when I built my first project along with a partner at the time, an experienced construction partner. We did 20 units in Dalston, sold those to Singaporean investors, and prior to them being built, it wasn't without its problems. There was lots of hiccups along the way and lots of learnings, but it was a great experience. Then moved on to developments in Chiswick, Chiswick and Dulwich, and also North London, as well as joint venturing on over 30 a phase of 30 houses in Northern Ireland, and many other flips that we've talked about over the years, David. So yeah, I'm currently in Dubai. I've got an opportunity out here that I'm exploring, and working alongside Mark, as he said, for what seems like quite a long time in this whole process, working with the council to get to where we are today. So it's a very exciting project, and one I'm delighted to be involved in.
I mean, just for what it's worth, the project, Michael, you talked about in Northern Ireland, the 30 house project is probably about, what, 3.5 miles from where I live. So I drive by it regularly, and it's amazing to see it go from a field to now, you know, over 30 houses completed on the project. I think there's another phase coming. So I'm certainly very familiar with that project that you were obviously heavily involved in. So brilliant. Thanks guys for that. That sets the scene. So yeah, Mark, so in terms of this project, I mean, maybe start off with how you sourced it. I think it's always a good starting point. And then just explain what the planning application sort of is, or what the funds are required for in terms of planning application.
Sure. So using property developer software called Land Insights, we were able to identify the underutilized nature of the land. So there's a slide that comes up later on, and it's also in the equity offer document, that clearly shows that there are 4 separate plots, and those plots are quite extensive, just over 2 acres in total, with only 4 detached houses on them. So clear scope for increased development and the usage of the land, and that's something that councils are keen on because it's brownfield as opposed to greenfield, and we'll come onto that in due course. So that's how it was initially sourced. And then moving on from that, approaches were made to the landowners, and option agreements were executed with them, which basically gives us the opportunity to purchase the land for an agreed price if we get planning, which is the beauty of the situation, that we're not compelled to spend millions of pounds buying the land if we don't get the planning. The option is entirely ours. So we have, in the equity of the documents, set out in quite extensive detail the breakdown of the costs that are required. So in summary, they come to about 252k, I think it is. And then when one adds VAT and the Leo crowd admin fee, etc., that brings us up to about 319,000 as a minimum raise. However, we are practical and we're prudent, and we're also realistic, and we realize that planning isn't straightforward and things don't always go according to plan. And therefore, we've also budgeted an additional 100k or just over to cover the monies that might be needed for any appeal, which is the 424, where the 424,000 for the maximum raise comes from. And the way the numbers pan out means that there is a projected ROI of 50%. So for every pound that someone invests, they will get a 50 pence return projected in addition to their initial capital invested in the scheme. I mentioned at the very beginning that we've been on this since August 2020, and throughout that time, over 2 years now, we've done so much work that, in a sense, a lot of the work and the leg work has been front loaded, and that's why we're quite comfortable that the time scale of being in a position to pay out investors in July 2023 is quite realistic, as in when we submit over the next couple of weeks. Yeah, okay. And obviously the all goes well, 9 months planning approved, then you're able to pay out. If for some reason the planning is rejected, then you have the option of appeal. If for some reason the appeal isn't successful, you know, investors do need to understand that capital is at risk, and obviously the payout is dependent on a successful raise. As you say, Mark, you've done your very best with you and your experienced team to mitigate the risk the best you can. So do the heavy lifting, and you're now moving into the application phase. So in terms of location, Mark, I want to explain briefly where is the actual site? Yes, so as the slide says, Caterham is 9 miles south of Crawdon, so it's from central London, probably an hour and a half's drive, but that's because London traffic is so crazy, but it's not actually that far as the crow flies. But it's a great location because obviously post-COVID, most people will be aware that there was a flight from the centre and a desire for people to have more space, more outdoor space. So places like Caterham, which are just outside London, but still within the M25, you can just faintly make out the M25 running under the circled Caterham label there. Means that it's perfectly positioned to attract people in terms of those who are looking for a home, whether it's an apartment or whether it's houses. And as far as we are concerned, the fact that it also borders onto the greenbelt, and in fact the greenbelt runs through the back gardens of some of the properties on the site, means that there is immediately available amenity space on site, which again is an attractive factor for those who are looking to purchase.
Okay, great. So we're going to try and play a video now. So I just need to jump off this and set this up, and it should work okay. Test my IT skills. Okay, hang on. No, I just need to do one more thing. Apologies. Yeah, that should be it now. Dal, if you just give me the thumbs up when this plays, please. It should be fine. There's something about a video, Mark. It just does the project justice, doesn't it?
Yeah, our architect did a great job of that, actually, because I think it really does bring to life the possibility and the fact that we've done a huge amount to maintain the wooded hillside elements, and as a result, we think it gives the council lots of opportunity to say to local residents, look, this is something which is fairly inconspicuous in the grand scheme of things, and the street scene isn't going to change hugely. So yeah, really happy with that.
Yeah. This is what you were saying earlier, and again, Michael, you've probably been involved in multiple plots into one deal, but you're saying, Mark, there's like 4 separate sites really in this project, so you've had to go and negotiate option agreements on 4 sites. And it does back on to a green belt behind you in terms of location. So, and this is the properties then that are currently on the plots.
Yeah, 4 detached houses.
Yeah, okay. Any comments on that, Michael, you want to make?
Yeah, well, I just think that the work that Mark's done in terms of maintaining relationships with the homeowners is extremely important, and you know, that's always key in these sort of things is constant communication, and that's something I've watched him achieve really over the period of time. It's really important to keep good relations with them, obviously.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, and again, there's just again, Mark, I'll let you comment. That's your townhouses at the front, and then your apartment blocks with again the CAD imagery.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, there have been various iterations of the scheme over the 26 months we've been working on it or thereabouts. So what you can see, there are 4 blue roofs, solar panels, which are the roofs for the 4 townhouses at the front of the scheme. That originally was a small block of flats, and the council expressed their displeasure. So we changed that from flats to houses to maintain the existing street scene, because there are houses there at the moment. Just to the south of that, you can just about see a children's playground. That again was a small block of flats. The council again expressed their displeasure, and again we took their points on board, and we provided a children's playground which is accessible not just to residents of the scheme, but also to non-residents who live in the locality. And in terms of the 2 large blocks that you can see there on the left, you notice that there is a gap between them. Initially, there wasn't a gap. There were 2 or 3 units there. The council described it as an unrelenting mass, and encouraged, yeah, exactly, encouraged us strongly to break it up effectively and have 2 separate and distinct blocks, and that's exactly what we did. So we've really worked with the council during this period. It's been a real pain on the one hand, and COVID hasn't helped during the early parts of that. But on the other hand, we've identified a lot of the potential booby traps that could have occurred once we submit, and we've dealt with them in advance. So that's why we're quite confident about our prospects.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a point worth making as a learning point, that what you've described there is a process of engagement with the local council, and really when it comes to planning and bigger schemes such as this, that process of engagement is key, Mark. I mean, you have to be patient, you have to take on board what they say. Ultimately they'll make the decision, but if you the expectation is, if you take on board what they tell you to take on board and you make the changes in line with their recommendations, you're then very hopeful they're going to give you an approval.
Yeah, and just to be clear, these discussions we've been having in terms of the council are with the council's own in-house planning team, its planning officers. And those are the guys and girls who will make a recommendation, produce a report for the planning committee, which is the elected members, and it's the elected members who make the decision. So clearly, if the council's own in-house advisors are advising positively in terms of our scheme, then we obviously have a good prospect of success when it comes to the committee taking its vote. There's no guarantees, because the committee doesn't have to follow its advisors, but the committee is also very aware that if they choose not to follow their own in-house legal advisors on planning law and how it applies to this scheme, that they're at major risk in terms of an appeal and costs potentially being awarded against them. Yeah.
Okay. Brilliant. Okay. So do you want to just explain then briefly each member of your key sort of team on the project? Maybe just sort of, who they are, maybe a sentence about what they're bringing to your collective skill set.
Sure. I mean, Michael's spoken for himself, so I don't need to elaborate on his background and his experience. He's steeped in property for nearly 20 years now, as he's explained. So he's been instrumental, great sounding board. We've knocked ideas around, ruled things out, included things in. It's been a great pleasure to work with him. And similarly, in terms of Cyril, Dr. Cyril Ogunmakin, so he's got a PhD in facilities management. He is a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Surveyors, and he was until very recently the CEO of a property investment fund, which typically worked on developments in excess of 80 and 90 million per site. He's now actually gone off to do his own thing, and is currently working on a co-living scheme in the Hoe counties, in addition to working with us. And Cyril's background and experience means that there is effectively very little that he hasn't got an answer to when it comes to problems arising, which always is the case when it comes to planning projects. Peter Rainier is our planning consultant, and we chose him because he has been chosen by Tandridge Council, which is the local authority, to advise it on numerous occasions in relation to planning disputes and appeals. So he has an intrinsic understanding of what Tandridge is looking for and how they approach property development proposals. So he's been instrumental in guiding us and giving us an insight into the correct path that we need to follow. And finally, there are other members, but you've correctly identified the key ones. Stephen Dryborough is our architect. He again was chosen by Tandridge Council to build a council block, which is quite unusual these days, but Tandridge Council built a block of flats, 22 apartments on the same road, Stafford Road, approximately 200 meters away. So he again understands what the council wants. He understands the local terrain. So for example, he knows from the previous projects that he did that the council had concerns about how blocks of flats on our side of the valley appear from the other side of the valley. So he's really worked hard to make sure the design is as inconspicuous as possible and has actually put much of the bulk of the block at the back, at the rear of it, rather than at the face. So it's insights like that which have just been so helpful and have saved us a huge amount of heartache as we've taken this forward.
Excellent. And listen, a shout out to you, Mark, for putting together such a great team. When we've been on the project and we were looking at your background in property, obviously you've had your journey in property, but you've managed to bring together a team of people that bring really all the skills that you need to deliver this type of a project. So you've done very, very well in doing that. So you mentioned earlier the financial summary. You ran through the numbers, and there they are on the screen there. So the cost of the full planning application, you've estimated at 252,991, and then obviously there's additional fees, platform fees, etc. on that. So your minimum raise is a 319, and then you've allocated appeal costs, which then would bring the total raise, maximum raise of 424. So I think that lays it out nice and clearly, and of course people can go to the equity offer document and read in more detail. But I suppose the key figure there is the actual planning application, 252,991, and you have already been spending some of your own funds, it's fair to say. You've already committed obviously some funds to the project, so that's obviously your skin in the game, and your willingness to actually part with your own personal funds to get this project going.
Yeah, shows my faith in it, and my belief that this is something which is viable, and it's also going to be of great benefit, hopefully, to investors and to the local community as well. So I think the last count we're at 95k in terms of skin in the game, and it's overall a worthwhile endeavor, we feel.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so if you want to just talk about the left-hand box, and I'll do the right-hand one. But if you do the left-hand one there and just explain, because really for an exit to happen, obviously it normally has to be some sort of liquidity event, and the big question is, how do you value a site after planning's been approved? So do you want to just maybe talk through sort of these numbers as to how you've arrived at the residual land value?
Sure. So we feel this is a slightly unusual, in a good way, investment opportunity as far as property development is concerned, because we are looking to line up a guaranteed exit even before the planning committee meets to make its decision. So what we're looking to do is have an exit by selling the apartments as a job lot in one go to an investment fund. Discussions have already taken place with a number of funds. The most famous or headline worthy is Afeeva, who most of you will have heard of. The equity offer document also refers to Equitix as well, which is a smaller but nevertheless significant player in this market. And what we're looking to do is to sell the apartments to them with an agreed price subject to planning. That price is going to be determined, as one can see there, by a calculation, which is essentially working out the value of the properties, deducting the build costs that are projected, the standard profit of 15% of gross development value, i.e. the end value of the units, and then that leaves the value of the land that they're willing to pay. In terms of the, as you can see there in the first column, produces a land value for the apartments of 5.5 mil. In terms of the GDV for the apartments, that's calculated by, it's quite a detailed mechanism, so I won't go into too much right now. But in essence, the fund is going to lease the units to the local council, and the local council will make payments, and those payments generate approximately 500k per year, and that 500k then produces an end value in terms of a yield of approximately 16 mil. As I said, the detail is in the document. As far as the townhouses are concerned, at the moment, the plan is to sell those on to a developer with planning. So we've got market rates estimates of what we think the end values will be. So 650,000 per unit, and there are 4 townhouses, so 650 times 4 produces the GDV of 2.6 mil, and a similar calculations undertaken in terms of the build costs, the standard profit, and that leaves the land value that a developer will pay. So you've got 5.5 mil approximately for the apartments as a land value, the townhouses just over a mil, just under 1.1. So that produces a total land value of 6.6. Out of that 6.6 million that will be received, the landowners will then receive approximately 5 mil out of that, and the balance of 1.6 mil minus fees will be used to pay the investors and provide a return to them.
Excellent. That's really, really clear. So thank you very much for walking through that. I think it's always good when the fundraiser can articulate very clearly the exit, potential exit for investors. So on the right-hand side then, just in case anyone's new to equity crowdfunding as opposed to debt or loan, stressing this is equity. Investors buy a share in the SPV that will own the asset. There isn't security, there's no PGs or debentures over the company. This is straight equity. So you can see along the top there, equity investors receive a projected 50% return on investment by way of priority shares. So priority shares means that the equity investors, you, the crowd investors, receive your profit share before the developer receives its share. So Mark's explained how they'll be creating a value here. Obviously the current landowners need paid, but the crowd investors will receive their return on investment before Mark and the SPV and the team can take any profit. That's what we mean by priority share. And again, you can go to the equity offer document and break that down in more detail. There is a term sheet there, but in summary, you know, a 50% ROI, if the maximum was reached of 424,000, that equals 212,000, and 212,000 represents 16.4% of the projected net profits, which is estimated to be 1.2 million. So that is explaining why we talk about the percentages in terms of the 50% ROI expressed as a percentage of net profit. So you can go through the offer document, see that in more detail. If you have any questions on that, I can see loads of questions firing in here. But again, if you have questions, you make sure you get it answered. But Mark's more than happy to go into more detail on the financials. So moving to Q&A here just in a few moments, and then we'll be wrapping up probably 5-10 minutes. But the project is currently what we call view deal on the platform. Okay, now what view deal means is that an investor can access all the information that's available, but we're not actually taking investments like right now. It does go live this Thursday at 12 noon. So this Thursday, 12 noon, effectively the doors open on the website. It changes from view deal to ready to invest. The color will change to a green color, and investors who wish can then make their investment. Now, at this stage, it's effectively an investment pledge, because once it reaches minimum target, there's then a shareholder agreement is issued for review. And it's only when an investor accepts the shareholder agreement and of course transfers their funds do they become an investor in the project. So pressing the button on Thursday secures, if you like, your slot, but you still have to review the equity offer, or the shareholder agreement, and accept that before you're actually in the deal. So it's also important after tonight, if you feel this is something that you may be interested in investing in, if you go to the pitch pages, you'll see here where I've highlighted in yellow what we call a register your interest box. So you can leave an email address. You can insert an amount that you may be interested in investing once you've done your due diligence. What that means is that Dal can stay in touch with you just to make sure you get all the information. If there are any changes or an update, then Dal can make sure that you get that. So this is, again, it's not making the investment, it's just registering your interest. But I definitely encourage you to do that. So we know who is looking to invest in the project come Thursday. So again, what's really important is from these pitch pages is you're able to access an overview of the business, the financials summary, have a bit more look at the team that Mark has talked through. There's also a forum, and again, investors can leave their questions on the forum, and then Mark or members of his team will answer those questions, and everyone gets the benefits of the questions and the answers. That's one of the beauties of crowdfunding. If you go to the forum, there's probably questions asked you didn't even think of asking, but you're able to see the answer, and therefore everyone benefits from that information being shared. And then once you're registered, you can download the equity offer documents, the key document. It'll cover in detail all the things that you need to know before you make an informed decision if this is an investment for you or not. So I encourage you to get a hold of the equity offer document. So Dal, I'll bring you in here now with any questions. And if we run out of time answering the questions, just so everyone knows, we will send out a separate email with written answers to the questions. So if we don't get to your question, please don't panic. It's not that we've avoided it. We will definitely send out any follow-ups that we need to. So Dal, over to you for the Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, quite a few questions, so that's good to see. So let's start off with, so how many car park spaces are being provided?
Question from my good friend Barry, who I met online recently through our common link, Michael. So hi Barry. We are providing 1 parking space per unit for the apartments and 2 parking spaces per house. The local council's standard planning rubric measure is 1.5 parking spaces per apartment, and that was a big issue for us at the beginning. However, that parking standard dates back to 2008, and obviously that was way before people became aware or focused on climate change and the impacts of vehicles on parking. So, sorry, impacts of vehicles on the environment. So what we have done is we have proposed a car club on site. Car club vehicles typically take 4 cars off the road for every car club vehicle. So we've got 5 car club vehicles on site. So 5 times 4 equals 20 additional parking spaces essentially. And the council, both Tandridge Council and Surrey County Council, who are responsible for all transport in Surrey, have both approved that proposal of a car club on site.
Excellent, thanks, Mark. Can you provide a rough breakdown of the 95,000 spent so far? And as a follow-on, are any of the consultants incentivized to encourage a positive outcome?
I'll deal with those in reverse order. They're incentivized in making sure that we deliver a successful project for the benefit of Danelise Homes and also anyone who invests. In terms of a breakdown of the 95K, good question. I'd say probably 20-25K to our architect. We've spent 17.5K with our transport consultants, 20K so far, I think, with our planning consultants. And we've also got the ecology team. So we had to do an ecological impact assessment. Arboricultural study was also done. Landscaping has been done as well. I think those are the main headings so far.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mark. How much are the management team investing? And then a second question on that is, how much is Mark investing to date and with this particular project?
Yes, I think we touched on that. 95k is the figure that's kind of been put forward. And I am the founder and managing director of Danelise, so I've been the prime mover as far as the finances are concerned. And I've been happy to proceed on that basis. And I'm sure Michael and Cyril have been as well.
Great, thanks, Mark. Have there been formal written offers from these funds for the flats? Also, are there numbers, assuming grant funding will be received?
No formal written offers have been received because we haven't gone in for planning yet, so they wouldn't do that. However, advanced discussions have taken place with them. They're aware of the number of units, they're aware of how the funding will work, and I'll touch upon that in a second. And most importantly, they're aware of the exit value and prices that we're looking to achieve, and they're comfortable with those because they're essentially market rates. So I think it's quite important to bear in mind that land with planning is at a premium in the UK because the planning process is so intricate, thorny, and unpredictable. So for us to be able to offer a site with planning for this number of units is no mean feat, and therefore, so far, the response has been very positive in terms of the funds that we've spoken to. As far as grant funding is concerned, without going into too much detail, although I may end up doing it, what will happen is that the fund will do a long lease to the council. The council will take people from its housing waiting list, and those people will be in receipt of housing benefits. And it's that housing benefits on a monthly basis that will be pulled together and used to pay the monthly return to the investment fund. So those people are receiving housing benefits, that's their statutory right, it's their entitlement. So therefore, it's as safe as houses, excuse the pun, that the grant funding will be received.
Thank you, Mark. Is there written pre-app feedback from the LPA which can be provided to investors before this goes live?
Yes, there is. As I mentioned, there have been a number of iterations. So the ones that we've got in writing are positive in parts and negative in other parts, which is why we've had to do so many changes. The most recent meeting and discussion that we had with them, which was in September, was where they expressed clearly and unequivocally that they are content with the bulk and the mass. We're still awaiting, councils, we're still awaiting for that to be provided in writing, but they have confirmed that to us in a meeting with numerous people being present. But yes, there are previous copies of the pre-apps available if required.
Okay,
thank you.
Dal, I'm just conscious of time here. If we can go, Mark, for really sort of short one-sentence answers if possible.
Sure.
There's a bunch of questions spanned in here. It'd be good to get through all the questions, even in one-liners, and then we can follow up more detail rather than spending all the time on one or two and then some questions not been asked. So I can see, Dal, they're still sort of flying in here. So
Yeah.
we'll try and go for sort of one-line answers where possible, please.
Okay. How do Mark, Michael, and Cyril know each other? Have they worked together before?
So we know each other because I put the team together. I was looking to take forward projects. I met Michael on a course because we both believe in investing in ourselves and bettering ourselves. And we then approached Cyril to make us a trio who we felt could effectively work together. So we haven't worked together before as a group.
Thank you. Mark mentioned contingency funds in case of the appeal. Does the team need to raise the 100,000 appeal fund now during the raise?
We don't have to raise it now, which is why we've got the minimum of 319k. So if that's achieved, we will press on. But it seems sensible whilst we're doing the raise for the initial application to also invite people to provide funding and invest in case there is an appeal.
Excellent, thank you. There is a defect on parking in the road and surrounding areas. Also, it's likely even the flats will have 1+ car each, since most folks would drive living here. Could this potentially impact your scheme?
I received 2 days ago a 272-page report from our transport consultants where they've undertaken studies that confirm that the increased traffic and impact on parking is immaterial in terms of planning law and planning applications. So we're very confident in that regard.
Excellent. Is the large apartment development next to the library a few hundred meters closer to town likely help? And if so, how?
It does help because it was designed by our architect. So we know that the council clearly is in favour of what he produces. And it also encourages the notion of there being large flatted developments on the road. I should mention briefly, there's already a block of flats next to our site, which obviously helps our cause. Excellent.
And lastly, with the UK construction materials price annual inflation reducing, but still running at 16.7% in September, is the minimum 15% profit margin buffer realistic in the deal stack?
I'd say yes, because firstly, we're going to have contractors in terms of the calculations. We're not looking to build out the scheme, but obviously the end buyer will be looking at the build costs when it comes to their calculations of what they're willing to offer us. So they are inevitably going to proceed on a fixed price contract basis, firstly, and that will be underwritten with a performance bond. So there's a lot of comfort there. Also, as the document mentions, the profit that we're looking to allocate is allocate to investors in terms of return, amounts to 16.4% of the available profit. So ultimately, if there is an issue in terms of the build costs and its impact on what the exit fund will pay us, there is scope there for that 16.4% return to investors to increase. So we'll do what we can to maintain the 50%.
Excellent, thank you. What date is it going to planning committee?
We are targeting April the 18th, 2023.
Great, thank you. 4 plots equals 4 vendors equals 4 option agreements. How long are the option agreements valid for until? So
there are different dates because the 4 vendors have particular levels of particular comfort levels before they would sign. And so I think the earliest one expires in May, and the latter ones, the latest one I think expires in January 2024. However, we've already had discussions with the one whose contract expires in May, and she is comfortable and willing to extend once we've got clarity on the timelines in spring next year.
Excellent, thank you. How secure are the agreements with the current landowners? Can they delay or go back on the agreed price?
No, they're legally binding agreements which have been put together by solicitors, independent solicitors on both sides, and they've been registered against the titles of each property with the land registry.
Excellent. What will be the situation around the townhouses? Will this be sold to the fund or separately developed?
The fund at the moment, or the funds we're speaking to, aren't particularly interested in the townhouses because they're too small for them from a kind of management perspective. They much prefer the flats. So yes, as I mentioned before, the plan is to sell them to a separate developer.
And just to follow on from that, what is the minimum number of units needed to make this attractive to a fund buyer?
It's about 40 units. So we're quite comfortable in that sense. And in a sense, the main issue is not so much about the fund buyer, it's about how many units can we get in order to generate the funds needed to pay the option prices and still make a profit.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, David, that's all the questions. So some great questions there.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic, Dal. Thank you for running through those so quickly, and thanks, Mark, for getting them well answered there. And yeah, it's always good to hear really good questions from potential investors. It shows the caliber of investors that are on a webinar like this, to ask a lot of those sort of searching questions, and I call it peeling back the layers of the onion to seeing what's at the heart of the deal, not just what all the outside looks like. So yeah, excellent. So this is just a summary before I give Mark and Michael the last sentence each, and then we'll wrap up. Again, just summarizing, this is a planning uplift project. It's very much on the higher risk of property investment, which is why the projected ROI is attractive at a 50% potentially. Looking at a 9-month project length if everything goes well. The raise amount, as you can see, there was a minimum at the 319 and a maximum at 424,000, and the minimum investment amount is £100. So that is the summary. So I'll let Michael, then maybe Mark, then just like a sentence just to wrap up and summarize, please.
Yeah, as I said, we think it's an exciting project. 42 apartments, 4 townhouses, great location that's in demand post-COVID. We're looking to line up a guaranteed exit. So the minute we get planning, we can sign off on the deal and call the monies in. Not in reality, not as quick as that, but it's going to be a very swift process rather than the usual 18 months trying to find an exit and buyers for the land and for the planning. And we genuinely think it's an exciting opportunity which people should get involved in.
Yeah,
Excellent.
I echo
Michael?
that. Echo that as well. David, I think it can't be stressed enough that the team that Mark has put around, the professional team that Mark has put around, have such experience within this council, and knowing that, certainly from my experience, is really valuable whenever you take a project like this on. Having a team that are sort of on first name terms with the people that are sat across the table from you that ultimately make the decision. So just wanted to stress that, and I think it is, as Mark said, a very exciting and interesting project to be a part of.
Thanks very much, Mark. Thanks very much, Michael. Just remind everyone that once you've done your research, read the offer document, if this is something that you think you may be interested in, then I encourage you after the webinar tonight, or as soon as you've done your DD, leave an email address, an amount that you may be interested in investing on the recorded interest. If you do that, it's a big help that we know who then to communicate with. And there are Dal's details. He is our investor portfolio manager. He's the point of contact for any questions about the project, or if someone's registering on the platform, doing their KYC, their AML, the appropriateness test, which needs to be done before you're investor eligible, then you can reach out to Dal and he can help you with that process. So he is the point of contact, dal@leocrowdfunding.com. So with that, it just remains for me to thank everyone for attending. Great to see so many on the webinar tonight. Great to have so many questions, very interactive. Brilliant job by Michael and Mark, I think, running through everything. So I think this is exactly why we do these webinars, is to give investors the chance sort of to see and hear directly from the fundraisers, get a feel for them, get a feel for their passion for the project, their knowledge of the project, their knowledge of construction and planning in general. And I think all those boxes have been very well ticked tonight. So encourage investors to have a good look at this project and see if it suits your investment strategy. So thanks again, Dal, for your part. And with that, we'll let everybody go. Stay safe the rest of the night. And again, we go live 12 o'clock on Thursday. If you're interested in being on the project, do your best to go on at 12 o'clock and make your pledge. Thanks very much, everyone. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
David, thanks.
Thank you.